Google is a software company that sometimes makes hardware. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the Pixel 8 Pro's camera system.
I love trees.
Where AI editing and video is at the forefront. I'm Becca. Welcome back to Full Frame. This is the $999 Pixel 8 Pro. It has a Tensor G3 chipset, a flat 120Hz 6.7-inch screen that has a peak brightness of 2400 nits, and of course, a temperature sensor. But its biggest updates come to the camera system. The most noticeable change is a redesigned UI. All of the controls have been brought down to the bottom of the screen for easier access and can be adjusted entirely by the right thumb. Even better though, there is always a visible, dedicated photo-video toggle button. Unlike on previous Pixel devices where every shooting mode was on a single scrollable line, now video and photo modes have been put into their own lines that are accessible via this switch. This has naturally caused me to switch between photo and video and back far more often, and they go hand in hand with Google's increased focus on video quality. The Pixel 8 Pro's 50-megapixel f1.68 main sensor is capable of 4K video at 2430 and 60 frames per second.
Sweet baby.
And Google claims that it has 2 times better optical quality and that the lens brings in 21% more light. While video from this device has pleasing focus fall-off and a fair amount of saturation, switching between lenses is met with jarring frame and color changes.
What is that? Is that the Google Pixel 8?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And when compared to the iPhone 15 Pro Max's standard 4K 24 frames per second video, the Pixel is just less consistent with its color choices. In low light, it adds a magenta hue, and when light quickly shifts, like it does here, the Pixel more obviously is adjusting to balance everything out, where the iPhone's change is more subtle. Not to mention, the Pixel is not able to output 4K ProRes log. However, I do appreciate the amount of contrast the Pixel holds on to. In its current state, I am not impressed with this camera's low-light video performance. It's a grainy mess. Although, video on the Pixel will be getting a boost when Night Sight for Video, a software that will offload processing to the cloud to digitally enhance video in low light, launches later this year. We haven't had a chance to put this to the test, so stay tuned for more on that this winter. There's also a new Audio Magic Eraser that can reduce background noise in video.
Y'all, I am so obsessed with this building. It's just like clean, and it's not made out of glass. And it has like all of these really cool, like small details to it that just like add up to this big, imposing, beautiful building. I mean, that is a good looking building. I love it. I love it. Man, I hate that I live in a skyscraper. I don't know why I hate that. I'm not gonna unpack that right now.
This feature's fine. Google has also finally kicked the overly cool tones, and images don't lean too far into the Samsung oversaturate everything zone either. When taking photos, the system is also not as afraid of contrast as it once was, allowing shadows on faces to stay shadows, sometimes even more than the iPhone will. Although, much like in video, the iPhone consistently gets the colors correct, unlike the Pixel. The lower aperture also allows for more natural focus fall-off, especially when a subject is closer to the lens. And lastly, I already talked about this, but I can't stress it enough, the video to photo toggle is huge, especially when video is finally looking equally as good, if not better, than still images. The experience of using this camera is far more fun with this simple change. The 48-megapixel f1.95 ultra-wide camera is seeing a whole centimeter of improvements this year.
Man, look how long my shadow is. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Because of a larger sensor, wider aperture, and a closer focusing distance of 2 centimeters as opposed to 3 centimeters on the Pixel 7 Pro and Pixel 8, the largest improvements come to the macro mode in the ultrawide. I get this question a lot: why is the ultrawide lens used for macro photography? It's because the lens is wider and the sensor is smaller as compared to the main lens, so you can have a much smaller minimum focus distance. Photos taken in macro mode are sharp and they do have a nice fall off, but I really only use it on flowers, and I don't know, I just struggle to find a need for it. This mode continues to feel gimmicky to me.
Just waiting for this guy to walk by. We'll get him. We'll get him.
The 48-megapixel telephoto lens has an improved f2.8 lens that captures more light. It is still a 5x zoom that equates to around 112 millimeters, and much like the iPhone 15 Pro Max's 5x telephoto, it doesn't hold a candle to the S23 Ultra. Samsung's 10x 230mm telephoto lens is obviously more zoomed in, but also just plain sharper in good light. Compared to the iPhone 15 Pro Max though, the Pixel more consistently identifies objects and separates them from the background. Though in perfect light, and without a subject in the immediate foreground, photos from these devices' telephoto lenses are hard to differentiate. The problem with the 8 Pro's telephoto lens is its stabilization. By default, in video mode, the Pixel 8 Pro has standard stabilization enabled, and this is great for folks who won't dare step into deeper camera settings, but in an attempt to provide a stable image, the camera creates frustration. I often felt like I was fighting the camera to pan or tilt slightly in order to achieve the framing I wanted. And even with stabilization turned off, there's a sort of sway to the image that can be difficult to work with. While these settings ultimately make for a sharper image, I can't get over how frustrating it feels when I use this lens, and it all just made me less likely to play with it at all. But specs aside, this system is so much more about the tools it provides to edit these photos and videos. Say it ain't so. We got manual controls, and this is big. When you take a photo on most modern smartphones, data from the scene is analyzed and carried down a controlled path to the best outcome, or most objectively quote-unquote good photo. Throwing user-generated turns into this path, turns that may or likely may not result in these good photos, is challenging for the system. But look at Google doing what Samsung has done for years, including some manual controls in the native camera app. There is now access to white balance, focus, shutter speed, and ISO settings, along with the ability to quickly switch between 12 megapixel and 50 megapixel photos, RAW or JPEGs, and even override the camera's choice to automatically switch lenses. You can overexpose at your heart's desire, underexpose the way God intended, and even pretend that this sensor is large enough to actually have a large focus range. Okay, so for someone who just ragged on the iPhone 15 Pro Max for not having these features, I am being a bit harsh. And although you can only get the Pro controls on the Pixel 8 Pro, Google has never claimed that the system is for professionals with a capital P. Instead, it's just another really fun tool to play with, and when I feel like fine-tuning my image, I can just pop in and do that. So yeah, it's a nice feature to have, and I'm stoked that it's here. This camera takes photos well, but it can manipulate them even better. Google's Magic Editor now not only allows for erasing objects or people, but you can also fully move things within the frame, or change the expression on folks' faces. These AI editing tools are fun, and making them accessible to everyone is great, but it also accelerates the creation of false narratives or realities, especially when you can do this to any photo you upload to Google Photos. And yes, many folks have pointed out that these photo editing tools are available in many other places, including apps you can install on your phone. Google is just the first phone maker to bake them in. And I don't think they're wrong for doing so, but with that approach comes great responsibility, and it is this lack of recognition that these tools could be used for bad that is the problem for me. Google explained to me that ITPC metadata is embedded into images that go through Magic Editor, meaning that if and when, and that is a very big if and when, other companies start adhering to the standard, anyone will be able to see that an image has been manipulated using the software. But we aren't there yet. In these tools, they exist now. And when anyone can just erase or move real things, it sets everybody up for more uncertainty. The Pixel 8 Pro's camera, it still struggles with an old weakness, which is color consistency. And it will come as a surprise to no one that the software and the UI were the most tuned and best part of the experience. So at the end of the day, Google remains a software company that sometimes makes hardware. And for every misstep it takes on the hardware side, there are 2 AI editing tools ready to make it right or make it up entirely. Okay, I finally reached that point in my YouTube career where I can say I have a D-brand skin. Well, The Verge has a D-brand skin, and in fact, they have two D-brand skins. Anyway, link down below to these things. I've made it. What can I say? See you in the next one, buds.